There is a lot of misinformation out there, and it didn't really occur to me until I began researching this book. There are times when I literally, even though I had the stats, I could not find things from the opposite side of a supposed non-biased argument that helped support the claim. And that really bothered me because it's things that were pretty well understood. And even now, you have a hard time finding some of the information that I put in the book unless you look into academic journals or something like that. And it should be readily available to anyone that wants to find the truth, yet it's not. So there's a lot of that misinformation out there. And having lived all across the world and studied multiple cultures and economics and history, I know how good we in the United States have it. And that's not being shared with everybody. A lot of people are being told that we're actually falling behind, that things are terrible here. So I want to share how free markets have provided better outcomes. They're morally superior to the outcomes that you would achieve in socialism, because socialism requires that you take from someone else through force, and I explain that in the book why I say this. You take through force and you redistribute it to someone else. It doesn't offer any way to actually grow the economy. So it's not offering a positive in any way. It's just another way of redistributing. At its core, the book is really about capitalism versus socialism and why we need to stick with free markets if we want to remain prosperous.
Welcome back to the second annual Rochester Hills Public Library Author Fair, hosted by the library and Rochester Writers. For Rochester Writers, my name is Michael Dwyer, and joining us for this author segment is John Herbstreith. Did I get that right, John?
Yes, sir.
And we just saw your video about you and your book, which is called Socialism, A Lie Full of Hope. And forgive me, I'm looking over at the screen, so I got the title correct. It seems to be quite a timely subject, and you may be on one side or the other of that socialism fence, but you felt the need to come out with this book now, or had it been something you were working on?
I started it following the end of the last election. It took about 2.5 years to actually write, and then of course distribute and everything. But it was at the end of the last election that I started looking at some of the statistics, and they concerned me.
And they concern a lot of people. And again, it's a hot button issue. Some people want to move more toward socialism, and some want to run far away from it. Where do we stand as a country right now? I mean, it's part of our lives now, isn't it?
I believe that it is. It really started to take more root under FDR. And, you know, there's some people that would say that was not a malevolent thing, but a benevolent thing. And that may be true. It may be that he had the best intentions at heart. And I find that that's very often the case. You know, most of the people that I've talked with that disagree with my stance that socialism is a negative, let's just say, I don't think they do this because they're inherently bad people. And that's kind of where we are right now in our society. It wasn't like that so much a few years ago. When I first started writing the book, things started to change where if you disagree with me, then it's almost like you're a vile individual just for disagreeing with me. I don't believe that. I think that a lot of very well-intentioned people look towards socialism, which has always been part of the structure of the United States. And like I said, has grown more since FDR. But it's not that people are bad because they believe a certain way. It's just I hope to illuminate some of the facts that they may not have to help them see it from the direction where I'm coming, where I look at socialism and encroachment on not just my freedoms, but every individual's freedoms.
Right. And so I think that in all governmental bodies, any country around the world, I think socialism or an element of socialism is always creeping more toward that full title. I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, is there any examples of a more socialistic society creeping toward capitalism or away from socialism?
There's some people that believe that there is a natural tendency for that to happen. And I think that would be in large part because under capitalism, you do gain a lot of prosperity. It's something that I talk about in my book that Hayek, who is an Austrian economist from years ago, he discussed how as a society that utilizes capitalism grows, where it will just eventually believe that natural outcome is simply prosperity, even if they don't utilize free markets. So eventually what happens is free markets are replaced by systems that are meant to ensure safety. My wife is from a third world country. She's from Colombia originally. And when we would go visit people down there, I always felt a need to really give out of pocket to help people, even if they were on the streets, much more than I do here, because there is no social safety net. And part of what we have, thanks to capitalism or free markets, if you will, is that we have had that buffer build up where we've become economically successful more than any country in the history of the world. And because of that, we've been able to allocate some of those resources for safety nets. The question then becomes, how large of a safety net do you want? And then you enter a welfare state, and then beyond that, you would enter a socialism. And if you really take it to an extreme, full-on communism, which I mentioned in the book, but I don't think that most people even now that look towards where we're going, that they see any inherent danger. I do. And it's hard to get that across to people if they don't have any historical context.
So what it sounds to me is what you're saying is that through capitalism, through the prosperity that comes with capitalism, that gives us the resources or the capital, using the literal word, to be able to have these socialistic programs of safety nets, and that without the buildup of capital, we wouldn't have had that ability.
Correct. And actually, even when Bernie Sanders was running, he would constantly talk, and this wasn't necessarily this last time, but the previous time that he ran for president, he would talk about how if you look to the Norwegian or Scandinavian economies, that they were socialist. And one of the individuals that was the president over there, I believe that, I can't remember if it was Norway or Sweden, I apologize, but he actually came forward and said, please stop saying that we are socialist economies. We are not. We derive our wealth from capitalism. So even a lot of the individuals that are over there understood where what we're seeing isn't the way things really are. It's quite different.
Well, and I've been to Scandinavia, and the price of beer is capitalism.
Yeah.
I know that from a fact. And when we say this, when leaders and different people point to Scandinavia or Europe or other socialistic countries, again, it's like somebody pointing to America and saying, well, you have Social Security, you're socialism.
Yes, so well put, yeah.
You know, we're looking at, they have an excellent healthcare program. They're a small population. They can do that, yet we call it socialism. It's just an element like we sometimes have elements.
Yep. Yeah, and I had people, when we first started putting the book out there, they immediately attacked me and said, well, we're not a capitalist society. we're not this, we're not. And I never said that we were pure capitalism or that we were pure socialism. Like you said, there's a mix. We're actually a mixed economy. Any economy is mixed to some degree. And I mentioned in my book that even at the height of the Cold War, Russia actually allowed black markets to thrive in certain areas because they worked better than their system, and they understood that. So to have certain goods or services actually available, they actually allow these black markets to survive. So yeah, there is no such thing as a pure economy. It's definitely a spectrum that we're looking at, and it's a lot more complicated because, as you said, you can have one part, let's say the healthcare industry, or you could have another part that is more or less socialistic, if you will. But there's no such thing as a pure economy, no.
So the people, Americans that maybe trumpet socialism, are folks that, like every American, they want the best for everyone. They want to help their neighbors. They maybe just have a different approach or idea of how to get there.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the safety nets. So we've got to control these safety nets so they don't expand so much they collapse.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. It's one of the things it's a difficult thing because what you have is, as you have more of a safety net, then you end up with people that are like, well, the safety net's big enough that I can freeload onto that safety net. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's part of human nature. When they talked about what's going on right now, COVID it's an extraordinary time, obviously. But with what is happening right now, there's a lot of people that when they brought out these programs to assist people, a lot of other people simply didn't want to go back to work. And there's a lot of instances where business owners actually were told by their own employees, I don't want to go back to work. And it shouldn't really come as a surprise to anyone. I thought it was comical that any politician would actually be surprised that that happened, because if I can make 90% of what I'm making and not have to do anything essentially for a given amount of time, hopefully, then why would I work when I could do something else that I actually enjoy doing? And, when you start to travel down that road, it becomes more and more difficult. And as people are able to learn that they're able to get the proper politicians in there that will give them these benefits, it becomes harder and harder to get out of that. And that's one of the fears that I have. And that's not an original thought for me. I'm sure you've read many people that have said something very similar. But as you begin to have it where these benefits are just like low-hanging fruit, where anybody can get to them, it negates the purpose for actually working. And if you don't need to work, where's the benefit to society? And where are you gaining that money, if you will, so that you can actually get back to work? Where are you going to gather that from? Well, if nobody is working or it's too bottom heavy, you're not going to have it for very long.
Now, wouldn't you have a lot of people say that, you're going to have people that abuse the system, no matter what kind of safety net you have? And these are just a few bad apples. It's not the majority at whole that the program's actually overall a benefit.
I'm sure that some of them are helpful for people, but the problem is that you want it so, and this is going to sound almost mean, but there is an inherent struggle with life. And I've had to struggle all of my life, and I'm sure you have as well. Everyone has different struggles they have to overcome. And part of that is that you have to be able to face that head on yourself. And if you do have that net, if you do have that where there's nothing pushing you back, or even if you have it so it's graduated, so that there's not a sudden, where all of a sudden you just cut off all benefits, where you can slowly lose benefits as yours increase. And economists have known this for years. So instead of having it so it's just a hard cut, having a ratio or something where you follow along those lines, it makes more sense. And then have those benefits degrade over time so people are aware that they actually can move in a way that's going to benefit themselves in the long run.
I want to remind everyone we're speaking with author John Herbstreith on his book, Socialism, a Lie Full of Hope. And that's a controversial title, I would say, and it might be on purpose.
Yeah.
Could you mention who your reader is, or who you think your reader is, and what is the message you want them to ultimately walk away with?
The person that I'd really like to reach is the person that disagrees with me. And unfortunately, it's been really difficult to achieve. You're able to get people that agree with you relatively easily to go, yes, I agree with you, I'll buy your book. But it's hard to get people that disagree with you to look at it. I've even had problems on Facebook. You know, they talk about how biased Facebook was before the election. I could not run ads. They just would not let me. The same information that I had sent to you, we sent similar commercials to Facebook, and they wouldn't let me run them. And we spent almost a month proving who we were. The book it's all cited and sourced. It's all valid information. There's no crazy, outlandish conspiracy theories or anything like that. So it was really disheartening because the people that I really wanted to reach, you're stuck in this echo chamber. And I wrote about that in the book, but it's really unbelievable because it's only getting worse. I could reach people that agreed with me, but I can't reach people that disagree with me. And these are the people I want to reach. I want to talk to them. And it's not a slap in the face. I want to say, hey, let's sit down at the table, just like you and I are, and discuss this. And I understand that you, the person that believes in socialism and that it's a better thing, or I understand that you have different ideas than me. And you explain why you believe they work, and I'll explain why they don't. And let's come to an understanding. And probably the one that I hear the most often is the medical. You know, it's funny that you brought that up because the medical industry is simply so out of whack with the prices in this country. It terrifies a lot of people, and that's understandable. And that's one of the areas where I do not believe a pure market approach would work. But I also, don't believe a pure government approach will work, where you just socialize the entire industry. So I think you've got to sit down and meet in the middle. And that's the people that I really wanted to reach. And it's been very disheartening because you can't find an avenue to do that. And our entire system is set up in that way where everyone is now, and it's worse than it's ever been, in an echo chamber where all they can hear is themselves.
Yeah, they have a lot of bullet points, whichever side of the aisle they're from or agree with, they tend to have the bullet points, have the talking points, and have very little room for debate. And I think that whatever your personal beliefs are, a slow approach is always advisable. I think from lots of professionals, economists, and even including myself, not that I'm an expert professional, but I think that if we're going to move toward capitalism or socialism or any change, it should be done slowly, so that it has the best chance for working.
Yep. And that's one of the reasons when I talk with people about things like this, and I agree with you on what you're saying, I talk about, say, Greece versus Rome. I'm big into Western civilization and all that kind of stuff. So I'm always fascinated by that. And the thing that I like is to compare a republic versus a democracy. And I say the change that happened in Rome was glacial. I mean, it was so slow that a lot of historians are like, it's amazing anything ever got done. But, it kept them moving slowly, like you would say, in the proper direction. And if something was causing a backlash, they could fix it. Obviously not always. Eventually things fell apart. But when you consider the time frame they were around, between, let's just say 800 years or so, then it really is miraculous how long they were able to keep that achievement running. And you compare it to like the Greek city-states, where it was more direct, so the change was much quicker. You had utter failure much more quickly. And when you're talking about economics, to have it so you suddenly pull the rug out from someone and their life is all in an upheaval, it's the worst thing you can do. And then you can't measure anything either, because there's just too many moving parts in an economic system. That's why a lot of people, when they talk about how little economists understand the economy, really, they have a good point. But it's really hard to measure something with, 350 million moving parts and emotions, and that's really what the economy is. It's not a machine. It's all of us working together.
It does. It takes everyone to collaborate, and many minds together come up with the best ideas. And I encourage people that maybe agree with John or disagree with John to pick up his book and maybe reevaluate your beliefs, and maybe you'll find a different avenue, or maybe you'll just concrete your own. But John, is there a website where people can go to find out more about you, and maybe a place to buy your book or send you hate mail?
Yeah. If you just type in the title of the book, you can get it on Amazon or any major distributor. But if you just type it into Google, it will actually, the first thing that'll pop up will be my website. And it gives a little background on me, my history. I used to be in the military. I have a couple of degrees in business and economics, and I have an MBA. So particularly, a lot of people will call me an economist. I'm really not an economist. Mine is in business, and then I have my master's in business as well. So, but throughout going around the world and seeing the different types of economies and the way people interacted, and it just gave me a lot of pause, and I wanted to share that with people, especially after not this current election cycle, but the last one going forward was when I started looking at the statistics and seeing where we were going. So yeah, if anyone's interested, if you just type in the Socialism, A Life Full of Hope, or John Herbstreith, it'll pop right up.
Well, thank you, John, for joining us today, and I encourage people to take a look at the book. And at very least, John, I hope that these different channels give you the opportunity to at least show off what you've done and not censor you just because of the titles. And best of luck to you. So that was John Herbstreith. We'll be back with more in a moment for the 2020 Authors Fair.